Can I also ask, and this is a question obviously of naivety, but is God also not saying to us, it's important sometimes to rest?
As we've said, the system is not working. We got huge amounts of debt, huge amounts of slavery, huge amounts of suffering, inequality, and the system's broken fundamentally.
But also, can I say, and again, this is where I think education comes in, we have got to move away in the model you're talking about from this myth that education ends at 18 or 21.
Is our education system failing our young people? Are they being encouraged to not innovate and to not think about society? And is that something that is making the world a less good place for us all to live in? Well, that's the question we'll be asking on the Manna Journey tonight. As ever, Phillip Ullmann is here, but also Richard Gerver, who is an educational expert and former head teacher.
The Manna Journey is the catalyst for change in our world. It's a consistent source of truth for the next generation and current leaders. Our mission is to change the world by reframing our current governance, by using ancient wisdom to solve modern problems, and by shaping innovative new businesses to have a culture of pursuit of purpose.
If I'm right, Richard, based on what you've taught me, so he says only take what you need, but that doesn't teach them to do the daily quota. But when they're told not to hoard, then you're starting to force a daily cycle because you can't take tomorrow's stuff. Therefore, you're doing it every day. They get it wrong because they need to make the mistake, and they go, no, you've got to trust me, and therefore they learn. And then the next verse says, then they gather every single morning because they've now learned experientially the lesson that hoarding isn't going to work because it decays. And there's a very interesting line. It says, and then the sun heats it up, the manna, and it flows. So let's start to apply this to the world of money now. So we've got this concept of manna, which is money. First of all, the amount of money is based on human beings, based on the number of people in the family, adults, males, females, and there actually is a scale later on in Leviticus based on what those numbers are. So you've actually got the right amount of money in the system. You have a use it or lose it principle that if you don't use it within 24 hours, wait for it, it goes. Which sounds crazy to us, but it's actually very clever because the purpose of this money is to ensure that everybody's needs are met. And the system knows if you continue to allow people to accumulate, you get what happened in Egypt, which means that you get all the money going to the top. So they say, no, you've got to get used to only the right amount of money in the system. Does that make sense, Richard?
Absolutely.
So here, just to be clear what you're saying, right, let's forget all this for a minute. Everybody goes out and does their job, but when you get paid, the money will come into your account every day, and then you use it or lose it. Now, what that means, presumably, is that if I've got more money than I need, then what I would need to do is pay somebody to do something for society.
That's the next step. Let's in a moment deal with the daily flow. There's two cycles. There's a 24-hour cycle where you've got to meet your own needs. You only take the right amount of money. You've got to do it within 24 hours. Otherwise, you lose your money. And then it says that causes the manna to flow. Now, why do you think if you're spending your money every single day, and this is, by the way, a no credit model. Remember, it's flowing, which means there's no credit. It's literally a physical asset, which means that you're paying on the dot. Let's say you're in the cycle. You will pay no credit, which means if you do a job for me, I'll pay you straight away because if I don't pay you, you're not going to do the job. If I buy a good from you, so what it's doing is distilling the world that we live in. We live in a world where money, gold and silver, is completely and deliberately confused with lending. So much so that we haven't got any gold and silver. The system we've forgotten, and we don't realize, and you didn't realize, that we haven't got the piggy bank concept. What God is cleverly saying is that let's create something which is physical, which you can see, and that in my world would be a ledger with gold and silver is not going to be used anymore because it can be stolen. But you can have a ledger, no banks, because that becomes the world of banking where it's lent into existence. Purely, it's mine, and therefore it comes into my bank account, and I can give it to you, no one else involved, very simply. And because I use it or lose it within 24 hours, I'm going to spend it with somebody, and then it will flow to somebody else, because of course I've got to pay for.
But can I jump in here, because this is one of the things that I think cuts to the heart of this entire debate. Most people are really struggling at the moment. Under Philip's system, sorry, I apologise, under the Bible system.
God's system, not mine. I can't claim credit to it.
Philip, you have many redeeming features, but being the creator of the universe is not one of them. But here's the interesting thing. Under God's system, people would be looked after and community would be built. But this is now so different to what people experience, to what people are being educated to believe in. That Stockholm syndrome, that fear of the unknown, means that people would rail against it.
So yes and no. So let me go back to the under fives, who are my heroes, clearly. In fact, I'd love to see the under fives write their own version of a Bible. I mean, it'd be fascinating, right? But you watch a group of young children in a nursery environment, right? And one kid is playing with the Play-Doh, and another kid's doing some painting, and another kid's playing in the sand, right? And the kid who is doing the Play-Doh decides that she needs a bit of paint, right? What does she do? She takes some of the Play-Doh she doesn't need, and she goes to the kid with the paint, and she says, "Can I have some of your blue paint, please? Because I need some blue paint to create more of a mess on my side of the table," right? And what they do is they trade.
They just instinctively look after each other.
Trade, right? And then the kid in the sand goes, "Oh, I could do with some of that as well. Here's some sand." So to me, what you're describing is the most traditional origins of cooperative. I'll grow the wheat, you feed the hens, I'll swap some of my eggs for some of your wheat. And what we'll do together is create harmony. We'll create a society where we all have what
Whereas
we need.
instead, what happens at the moment is everybody is forced into being a brick maker, basically a robot for the system, and a few people hoard everything.
Yeah.
And it just feels, and so it's amazing that you say this, that not only is it God's system, but it's the natural instinct of a child
Let
as
me
well.
just describe to you what this means in current economic terms. So the money in the ledger is the right amount of money. So not the current system, money is proliferated. It just grows and grows and grows, and it's literally lent into existence.
And that's what causes inflation.
And that's what causes slavery. It's what causes the suffering. In this system, the money is what you need, because it's about needs, and you know how much you need in a system. And it flows. We've started with the 24 hours. Everyone's needs are being met because it's guaranteed. And it's flowing because you pay without credit, you pay on the nose, and therefore it's the world of no credit. And let's be honest, talking back to my own history, this is the way we were educated. I was a good businessman, I did what everyone else did. So when I started in business, the workers were paid weekly. I was trained as a good accountant, moved them to monthly, because that's what you do. Because that gives, and it's actually, with the benefit of, it's actually theft. I confess to my sins, because what it does, it means that money, those 4 weeks, actually sit in your bank account, and it doesn't sit in, they can't put food on the table. What do, Richard? If they haven't got money, they go to payday lenders. What rate of interest are they paying in the payday lenders?
30+%.
But it's amazing, Philip, on that point, because so what you've done on the face of it is gone, we've credited our balance sheet, we put this. But what you've actually done is you've awarded yourself an interest-free loan financed by the poorest people in society going to payday lenders.
And society says, well done, Philip. No, not very good. Yeah. So what this is describing is money. It's recreating money. We've lost money. So the first 24-hour experience is money, which is there to meet the need, to meet the food. And only the right amount of money is in a system, which means no inflation, because you've always got the right amount of money in the system. And you can't create more, because you can measure the amount of money in the system and everybody's needs, and you've got flow because you're paying on the dot. The next day, hopefully, the money has gone from me to somebody else. And then the end of day one, hopefully, if the system works properly, it's flowed around into other people's bank accounts. But then there's a problem, because it won't work. If we did that nowadays and we stayed Sunday, we went into a city and said, from now, the beginning of the morning, everybody will get the right amount of money. And then they go to a supermarket and they go onto Amazon. That money is not going to flow into the. Can you see that, Richard? It's not going to go to other people locally because it's going to end up in Palo Alto. It's not going to end up. It's going to end up in the wrong place. So that's what the next verse says.
But can I just pull in here, because there's going to be a lot of people watching this who mistakenly think that this is socialism, and I want to explain why I think this is different. Because socialism is about the state. It's about the government saying you can have this and you can have that. What actually this is all about is saying no. Each individual will make a decision about their own lives, and they will cooperate together and work together. And so I envisage this. So say, as an example, I have an amount in my bank account that I can only last for 24 hours. And I go, well, okay, what do I want to spend it on that would make my community better? So I've got to spend it, and so I'll go, well, okay, the church fence needs painting and Bob's out of work. But it becomes, decisions get made ultra locally. And I think that is a significant advantage with this system.
So they get double on Friday, and they've not worked harder, which is my experience. As fortunate, I've been blessed, and I don't need the money, but it just flows, because that's the way the system works. We don't have a proper flow, a regulator. It goes into the bank accounts of certain people. That's the way it is. And they then go to Moses and they say, what's this? You told us only to gather what we need. And suddenly, because of this irregular flow, I've got much more than I need in my bank account. And Moses says to them, that is the Sabbath. That's the concept of the Sabbath. What that means in my model and my understanding is let go. I.e., whatever you do, you've got more in your bank account, don't enslave. Can you see that? Because the temptation is when you get more than you need, you buy your yachts, or you start to get people to produce more and more for less and less. And straight away, Moses says, don't enslave. But remember, he's telling them, but they again, you always tell me, they're not experienced it yet. He just said to them, so they don't know what it means. So he says to them, leave it overnight. So this time you've got 48 hours. So you've got more money than you need. You've got 48 hours, which is use it or lose it in 48 hours. But he's saying you won't find it. So he leaves it overnight. So that's the stages in the process. He says, don't actually, you can hoard this. And they're allowed to hoard it, but he doesn't tell them why. And then the next morning, he tells them when they see they've got a lot, he says, the reason why you've got is because nothing is coming. There's going to be a famine today. And therefore they're experiencing suddenly, that was the reason why I got double on Friday, because I've got to use it for the Saturday. But he's told them you won't find it in the field. But they've got to learn from experience. They still go out. This is where they get it wrong again. And they look into the field because they want more. Even though they've got double, they know they've got enough for the day. They still go out. Why do you think they go out to the field even though they've been told there's nothing in the field?
So hoarders.
Because they're hoarders. Because they want more and more and more. And so therefore they are experiencing, what it's like to have more money, and then they get greedy and they want more and more.
But here is the thing that I think is critical to the Manna journey as you've gone through it. And I think it's this. If you are in a situation where you personally decide how society operates, because you've got money that disappears after 24 hours, then you have to have a community that sits behind it. You have to have regular get-togethers. You have to know that Mickey can teach your kid to do the flute. You have to know that Stephen's good as a bricklayer. Yeah. You have to know that Simon can make pots and pans. Otherwise, the system doesn't work. And so, first of all, if what you're trying to achieve as a profit is social benefit, then the fact that you have to spend your money is good, but also the fact that you know your community makes you able to do it.
And just to explain what this means, you've got a second use it or lose it, but you've got 48 hours, which means what are you going to do? You're going to go out into the streets and you say what jobs need to get done, like what houses need to be built, what education, and you say who has not got the flow. You actually say, and then you say, 1 minute, let's match those together. Because if I don't use it in within 48, I lose it anyway. So suddenly you've got an incentive to actually sort out the problems of society which relate to other people within a very short time.
Can I also ask, and this is a question obviously of naivety, but is God also not saying to us, it's important sometimes to rest? And actually,
yes.
What I'm doing is making sure, because what God's teaching people as well as what you've just said is actually, you need to rest. If what you do is work 7 days a week in order to put the bread on your table, you're going to burn yourself and each other out. So I'm also giving you more in that 48-hour period because I am teaching you to value the fact that sometimes when you're working hard, you need to breathe.
And you're writing your own Bible. Let me look at the next verse. Sorry. No, it's what it says. That if God, so that they do actually go out to look. So they fail the test, and then God gets involved, and He says what you just said. Why aren't they keeping my obligations? See that I've given them this Sabbath. Therefore, I tell them on the sixth day you'll get double. Stay at home. Don't go out from your place on the seventh day. Spend it with the family. Build family, build community. So it's not just don't enslave. It's a dual message. When you're not working and you've got a day, you actually are building relationships. So it's a combined message is what we're saying. Number one is don't enslave. And part of not enslaving is building family, community, nation. The two are very closely intertwined, aren't they, Richard?
But this is where, and obviously we're coming to close to the end of the show now, but this is where it all comes together, doesn't it? Because people are being pushed into being robots. People are losing that sense of community. People are losing that sense of relationship. I mean, in schools, we don't have time really to talk about this. You know, we're more interested in sex education than we are about community. We're more interested in the mechanics of all this than the relationships of any of it. And so what I have now is a fractured society. What I have is a lack of community. What I have is an inability to rest. But what I do have, in exchange for all the things I've lost, is I have a phone where I can buy cheap junk for £1 and it'll be delivered the following day. I don't need any of this stuff. I don't want any of this stuff. But that's what we get in exchange in a slavery system. And the Manna doesn't want that.
Can I just summarise where we're up to? And this will explain the Manna journey, which I think is world-changing, and the strapline, which is flow and let go. So summarise it. As we've said, the system is not working. We got huge amounts of debt, huge amounts of slavery, huge amounts of suffering, inequality, and the system's broken fundamentally. We don't have money. We haven't got cash. It's gone. We've got this money is lent into existence. And if we got confusion, no one understands it. No one realizes that we give these banks the power to do whatever they like. So God says, no, I want you to think very clearly. Two different functions, separate. I'm an accountant, double entry bookkeeping, garbage. No one understands it because it's creative, it's complete nonsense. God said, no. Two different forms of money. Number one is the daily money, which is, we don't want inflation, so we create a single entry, which is effectively yours. It's real. It's not loaned into existence. And that you give the amount of money in the system is based on the number of people. And it's always based on the number of people. And there's no inflation. And you're focused on finding the uses for the money. So you have zero inflation, full employment, because you've got the 24-hour cycle for yourself needs. And then you've got 48 hours to look after other people's needs. You're going to find people jobs. And therefore, you're going to get full employment. Then you've got the problem. That's number one.
Can I just interrupt? Because the other thing about this that is really critical is the issue of social security. So if you lose your job, rather than just sitting on the dole, which I think destroys people, what will happen is you will get money given by your neighbours, but you'll end up having to do some work for it, which I think is a much better way. Because one of the problems that we've got, and I know it's only a minor part of this, is one of the problems that we've got with social security is by creating a one-rule-fits-all thing, it actually doesn't work for anybody properly. And the only way you can actually support people is if individuals...
Can I just deal with that? Because there's a very important point that, which you've raised, which we'll have to explain clearly. Why do you need a second record? So if let's assume everybody's going to get what they need every day. And when let's assume the money's not flowing around. Therefore, the money in the bank account in Palo Alto disappears at the end of the second day, but it doesn't. But the person still needs food. Yes. So that person will be lent money by a local institution because it didn't flow. But the point is, if you lend it based on a welfare state, they're going to become slaves because they're going to be dependent on receiving it. So they have the second record, which is this person is dependent. The money hasn't flowed. Therefore, you need to record the loan. You see that? Not to pay it as debt, but to actually record this person needs job.
But also, can I say, and again, this is where I think education comes in, we have got to move away in the model you're talking about from this myth that education ends at 18 or 21, right? And so the person that loses their job, you can turn round to them and say, I am going to share this with you so you have bread on your table.
Yes.
But in return, you need to return to education. You need to skill in something new. Yes. You need to learn a new talent, a new skill. You need to learn something else that we as a community need, and that will help you back into the workplace. I remember talking to you, Philip, years ago when we were talking about you placing people in some of these big warehouses. And I said, wouldn't it be brilliant if we could reward the people that turn up on time every day, do their job, and we don't just give them a salary, we give them credits towards being able to buy a course in something, to learn something new. So that actually there is a return of expectation on every individual to say, okay, you have lost that job, or that job has been replaced by technology, but here's education, and this education can now feed you ready for you to move into that next place of work.
I would have loved to have done it, as you know, but it needs clients to cooperate, and clients were not interested.
But actually, the reality is this story in the Bible, that is precisely what happened. As I mentioned before, that after this period in the wilderness, they do literally build a country. Yeah. Now, all they were brickmakers originally. So one must assume that somebody naturally, picks up a piece of wood and he happens to be the best one with it, and he learns the skills and passes it around.
We have a system that is not working for the vast majority, massive inequalities. God's answer is ingenious. Two separate ledgers. One, real money, which you can control, not magic, not loans into existence, which flows around on a daily cycle, which you've got to use within 24 hours for yourself, within 48 hours to meet the needs of other people. If you don't use it, you lose it. Yeah. Therefore, but these people still need to be given the food that they have. So what we have is then have a second ledger, which you lend those people who have not got the flow, the money, but you do it by way of not debt. So because it's there to try and help people find employment, as you described, therefore once they found employment, you don't need that money. So it's not debt in our world. It's written off once the problem is solved. So therefore you're not going to get an accumulation of debt, and you're not going to get the servitude that we live with, and you're going to get a system of flow and let go. That's clear.
Absolutely. Well, I have to say, we told you that we were challenging society and challenge societal norms in the Manna journey, but I hope that you found this discussion interesting. Thank you so much to Richard Gerver.
Pleasure.
And thank you, of course, to Phillip Ullmann. Until next time, goodbye.